Us.
Thank you for letting me join your show, Joe.
Yeah, welcome to the program.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely, dude.
Sorry I'm late.
No, it's okay, man. Shit happens, bro.
Well, Jeremy, are you ready? We can just
Good to go.
throw this
Yep.
right in here.
Let's do it.
Rich, you good?
Joe, how do you say your last name?
Thank you
I
for
hear it a lot of
asking.
different ways.
There's only one though. That's right. Pisa Pia, like the Leaning
Pisa
Tower
Pia.
of Pisa.
Gotcha. Thank
Just
you.
think the Leaning Tower.
Okay.
And we are good to go here, by the way, guys.
All right. Welcome to the Dynasty Self Help Podcast. It's a podcast helping you self actualize in the hobby of Dynasty Fantasy Football, a show where we can help you isolate the truth from your own perceptions of the truth. I'm Kyle LaPointe, downloading my thoughts to you from Fort Worth, Texas, and joining us from State College, Pennsylvania is my co host, Jeremy Schwob. How are you now?
Struggling today.
That's fantastic. So today we're going to tell you what we're going to tell you with a bit of early thoughts on our biases and their influence on our positional choices in fantasy football. Jeremy, I noticed that there's someone else sitting on the couch with me. Can you introduce me?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have the esteemed pleasure of having Joe Pisapia today, host of Sports Grid, Line Star DFS, and a wrestling podcast, In This Ring. Is that what it's
That's
called?
right. That is right.
I have not checked that out, but that channels my younger years of WWF before WWE.
So are you upset that in the G.I. Joe Scott Fishbowl, I took Sergeant Slaughter, one of the few wrestlers turned G.I. Joe? Uh-oh.
Oh, am I upset about
Yeah.
it? No, I'm not. I'm not upset about it at all. I'm all for that. I was always a Snake Eyes guy anyway, because
yeah.
all black. I got to stay on brand with the Black Book. That's really, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. Speaking of the Black Book, so Joe, you are the author of the 15-time #1 best-selling fantasy Black Book. We have the 2020 edition available now on Amazon. I believe, at least at one point, and correct me if I'm wrong, but part of the purchase portion was going to go to Fantasy Cares. Is that still happening?
Yeah, this week during Scott Fishbowl during the draft, we always like to donate a portion of the proceeds that we sell. So we ask everybody to kind of retweet the link and things like that and raise more money. Last year we raised a few $100. Year before that, same thing. I'd love one of these years to get to a couple thousand, but it's still early and a lot of people still, they kind of fall into it by the end of July. But it's nice. So we always do that. And in August, we do another fundraising week for St. Jude's Children's Hospital, where we run that for a week too. And last year we donated a couple $100 to St. Jude's as well. So we like to try to do some good while we're out there doing good to help people prepare for their fantasy season. So everybody wins. It's a win-win across the board.
Absolutely. Well, that's excellent stuff. We appreciate you taking time to join us. So we'll for sure kind of retweet those links.
Thank you.
to try and
Right
get a
now.
few more people. Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, we're pumped to have you on today. We're gonna have some fun. We've got some hoops for you to jump through here and there. But yeah, we'll get to those a little bit later. But we're kind of gonna start with this positional stuff, especially kind of I like to dig into the kind of the psychology of the positions. And I haven't written an article on it yet, but I kind of use some of these podcast episodes as kind of a foundation for writing some of those on DLF. And so I'm excited to dig into that. We'll, of course, put you on what we call the hot cushion with Kyle, a little segment that is a crowd pleaser for us. And then I've got a little game that we'll dig into a little bit later. But before we jump into a lot of that content, this is the Dynasty Self Help Podcast, and we're here to really take you on a psychological journey, Joe, and really help you learn more about yourself as a Dynasty owner, hopefully. So in Dynasty, what would you say you need the most help with?
Should I have taken some shrooms or something before this? I feel like you're gonna be my guide, walking me through. What do I need the most help with? I don't know if I always like to have a plan of. I always approach things in like a 3-year window. For me personally, like I don't like to get too far ahead of myself where you're constantly in a rebuild, and I don't like to let every single veteran go by if they're a decent value. So I feel like there's like a happy medium there, because in the NFL, so much can happen in 3 years. I mean, just look at Kareem Hunt, right? Look at the value of his fluctuation in a couple of years, right? And that's a guy in dynasty leagues this year I'm buying everywhere, because just a couple of years ago, he would have been a top 5 overall pick in a dynasty league. And now, he's going somewhere in the 3rd round potentially. So like that's, or 4th or 5th, depending on how deep the league is. But it's, to me, like that's what I kind of focus on. So I'm always open to learn though, if there's something you'd like to drop some knowledge on me or whatever sort of thing you want me to smoke here on the show as we talk. It's fine. Everything's good here.
Absolutely. The people that come in and say, I don't need a whole lot of help. I'm here to help others. We'll find something wrong with you. And
well,
that's what's like.
Thing. I hate like this is the worst thing. It's like, of course I can learn. Like who the like all of us can learn. That's like the worst. Was like, oh, nothing I say is ever wrong, and nothing I ever I can't be taught by. Of course you can. Like that's the dumbest thing ever. I mean, Mike Tagliere just wrote a fantastic piece the other day that I ended up turning into a whole segment on TV because I thought it was such a good piece. So of course we can all learn from stuff, and that makes everybody better. And there's a lot of room in this community for lots of different voices, and that's something that I'm a big promoter of as well. So yeah, so let's go. Let's do it. What are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, so I think your point rings true. I think there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people with things wrong with them, and there's liars.
I would agree. I agree with that.
So what are we going to do?
Jeremy is a trained psychologist, so he can actually do some of this stuff, which really is pretty neat, right? So he's applying his trade to our fun little goofy hobby, or for like somebody like you, an actual career that you've made out of it, because you started out, 10, 15 years ago, basically, clawing your way up, and now you've built something successful and you've got people working for you. And
I do.
That's so awesome, man. I mean, it can happen with hard work, and what you've produced there with the Black Book is just out of this world. It's great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
It's so concise. It allows us to really look at value across player positions and do these different things. And, I think that's a really neat foundation for the kind of analysis that we like to add to it and say, what happens if your brain gets in the way when the numbers tell you what's right? I see these numbers, but my brain says, no, I'm taking Hunt in the 4th round.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is, and RPV is such a great tool about this because it really takes away the name brand value. And like a perfect example is like that Aaron Rodgers thing. Like that's a guy he's living off name recognition right now. But if you look at where he stacks up, he's really a low end QB1 at this point. Like, and it's understanding and stripping that away. And I like to do that. And sometimes you look at the RPV and then you have to, it builds in a lot of, it takes projections, but it also takes previous season stats and when applicable 3-year averages into that whole mix. And then it shoots out a number. But the fun part about it is then you can have instincts, which is where your football instincts take over, which is looking at Kareem Hunt and saying, look, I remember what he was a couple of years ago and how good he was before the suspension and how good he was when he came back for a few games. So there's a player like that it's all about the upside and the ADP when you compare those things. So right now, yeah, he's probably I think on RPV, he's probably the top RB3 based upon workload. But man, there's a real chance that he could finish as the top of RB2 when all is said and done in PPR. And I think it's always that balance between the numbers and the football acumen. It's never just one thing. And that's why I always encourage people. It's like, you can't just look at the stats. You got to watch the games. You got to see what's going on. You had to know that Mark Ingram last year was going to be an integral piece for Lamar Jackson because he was a guy that he could rely on and understand picking up blitz coverage and things like that, where you had a veteran presence back there. So anybody who thought Justice Hill was going to run away with that job didn't know enough about the game of football and understanding you're not going to do that to a young quarterback. You're going to put in a veteran running back who can be like a second signal caller back there. And you would see them on the bench talking to each other. You see them in the huddle going back. You see them before the snap going back and forth. And those are the little things, too, that you have to bring to the table along with all the great stats and analysis and deep stats and things like that. So to me, it's always it's when you push everything into the table together that you get the best potential product. And that's always what I try to do with the Black Book, too.
Yeah, and your point about expanding beyond just one piece of it. And that's, when I think about positions or looking beyond positions, that's really true. And particularly, I started playing Dynasty maybe 6 years ago, kind of moved from redraft, and I played all kind of, fantasy baseball and all that too. And so I really honed in. And when I jumped in, it was, wide receiver is king because of stability over time. And it was also, it was driven by Julio and AJ Green and the class of 2013 and those guys. And then, it shifted in my time playing to, running backs, and zero RB became a thing, and then robust RB
I always hated zero RB. That was just lazy fantasy to me. I hated it. I said it then, and I was all in on all the RBs nobody wanted that year. And if you were, you had Todd Gurley like I did everywhere, and it was awesome. It was great. It was so much fun to be kind of rub it in people's faces. And I'm just gonna put it out there, like you should always have a plan. In a draft, there's only two things you need to be: prepared and flexible, because that's what it's all about. That's your key to success in every single draft. You can have a plan, but then eventually you have to be flexible with that plan in some fashion. But like these things you're talking about, they're cyclical in the game. As rules change, the game gets more wide open. So things have changed over the years with wide receivers, but we've had this running back renaissance the last couple of years too, of all these backs. So you have to approach the player pool specifically in every year differently. And I think sometimes there is too much of a sheep mentality where some of the bigger quote unquote analysts, as they like to call them, they'll be on something, right? And then everybody else follows that suit. Well, that's not a great idea. Like all of a sudden, like then you're all going to be chasing the same things and you're going to miss out on some other opportunities. So I want to teach people to fish instead of just giving them fish all the time. Like I think there's something to do with that. And I think that that's very important. And it's also understanding the evolution of even the quarterback position, because I did this huge write-up in the Black Book this year about the way over the last 5 years, the quarterback position as a whole is scoring more points because you have guys who are in control of their own points more. Guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Cam Newton, to a certain extent, last couple of years before he got hurt. These are guys that score touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. These are guys who get points with their legs. They have more control over the scoring in their own offense than even some other quarterbacks do. So it's a fascinating thing to watch the constant evolution of the player pool in every year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we get unique wrinkles in more recent years with like super flex or tight end premium or 2 QB or 2 tight end or or there leagues where you completely open it up where you have minimal requirements cross position and you have a bunch of flex spots where it changes the way that you need to kind of adjust your process and it speaks to that flexibility that you need. Right. How do you feel about people that are kind of religious to a particular position where it's like, I have to go running back right now, or like, I'm a hardcore wide receiver guy, but I don't just say like, oh, it has to be a wide receiver here. It fits my process. And if it's not there, then I move on to something else.
It's all about the player in the format and the spot, and an auction's a whole different other animal too. And that's why I love auction, because that's the real deal. That's where we all put our money on the table together. And it's your will against my will and your knowledge against my knowledge of the player pool. And we're all on the equal footing and we get exactly who we want or who we try to get. And when you're in snake drafts, ADP to a certain extent is going to dictate pretty much what you want to do. And I frown upon that. I like the wide open, other auction style. But, I think when you're looking at the player pool, it's always important to realize that you can have preferences. You can have styles. I'm a guy that would prefer to get some of those bell cow running backs if I can, but I might not be able to get that, where I am in a draft, or it might go before me. So I have to constantly, again, be flexible and understand that, fantasy is not about me filling out my roster. It's about me building roster core strength, which is something I try to drive home in the book too. That is the biggest mistake people make. They go through a draft and they're like, well, I need this and I need that. And like, no, you need to be good somewhere. You need to be above average as much as you can. Because if I can outproduce you from as many roster spots as I can, as often as I can, ultimately that's going to lead to my success, and I'm going to win more fantasy games. And if it didn't work, if RPV didn't work, we wouldn't be selling so many damn books. I'm telling you right now. Like it's because it's simple and it's effective, it's adaptable, and it works. So when you give people that, it says, okay, well, here I am, and now all of a sudden, do I want to go for a fantasy league average running back or somebody below when that ship's already sailed? Or do I want to start building, a roster strength at wide receiver where I can be above the fantasy league average wide receiver 1, and maybe I can double up, and then I'm ahead in 2 also. And then maybe I'm smart enough to find a running back who can, play above board and outplay his return on investment. And that's how you build a winning franchise in fantasy football.
Definitely. So looking through more of a dynasty lens, how does that change the way you approach a draft?
It's a good question. Look, there's no way around it that wide receivers are always going to age a little bit better and probably last you a little longer. But at the same time, you want to win, right?
Right.
So if you get an impact running back for 3 years, flags fly forever. Go take that championship, try to make it work, and don't be afraid of it either. Because I think that's the worst thing too. Because the teams that have Saquon, teams that have Ezekiel Elliott, the teams that have CMC, they're going to be the better teams. So even for a couple of years, you take that ride as long as you can be on it, and you try to roll with it. But overall speaking, yeah, I think having a good chunk of wide receivers that are going to be good for a 3 to 4 year period is really important to have. And like we said, it's cyclical. Like in a couple of years, we're going to see, like take last year, for instance, right? Tight end was the three guys, or as I like to call it, Kelsey, another guy, and then a whole bunch of question marks. And then this year, it's very different. There's a nice soft middle there with guys like Andrews and Waller, and see how the pool's changed so much in a year. You have to be aware of that, and you have to not worry about it too much and realize that in 2 years from now, who knows, wide receiver could be really thin. Like, you just don't know how these things are going to shake out. So constantly evolve with the game as it's evolving, and the player pool is changing because it is going to cycle through, and you have to make sure you adapt to it.
Absolutely. Though I think that the most interesting aspect to me as kind of a psychologist and kind of trying to take a zoom out perspective is why with those changes, then everybody is like, plant your flag and dig it in with cement. And like, that's the new thing. And that's never going to change again. Like
that's people looking for clicks. And see, that's the problem. That's people looking for, that's the ego of the analyst talking. That's not, see, I care more about your fantasy team than I do care about mine. I like to win too. But like, if your team is winning, then my business is successful. Meanwhile, everybody else is so concerned with their own brand. Sometimes they're not as concerned with everybody else winning and being successful. Like if you see me do a mock somewhere, that's how I would draft that team. I'm not drafting that team so people talk about it. I'm drafting that team because that's how I think I should have drafted it, because I want you to look at that and have that as a reasoning for maybe why you want to take a zig when somebody else zags or what have you. Or these are the kind of players I think can help this year. And I think that's where sometimes the industry fails at times, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it trickles down quickly to the masses where, if you or Evan Silver, or Sigmund Bloom, or someone is changing their mind about something and saying, now that tight end position is 5 deep at the top, or there's that, that second tier is, more playable or more valuable now than it was, then that's going to impact, 100 drafts that we're not in, that listeners are in. And then that, impacts ADP and things like that. And that's how this...
With great power comes great responsibility, Jeremy.
Exactly.
We'll let you know when we find that power.
I'll let you know when I find my responsibility. No, just kidding. I kid. I have a lot of it, actually. Too much. That's why I'm tired.
Well, that's important to acknowledge and be honest about, that you realize you have that impact, because, you hear some people say like, oh, I'm just one person, doing things my way. And it's like, no, you're impacting all these other people that, are honestly trying to get better and trying to know and going to you for advice. And they're going to take your word as law a lot of times. And so it's important to be, I think the way that we can have an impact, we as a small entity and you as a large entity, the way that we as a community can have a good impact is being transparent about our processes, and being transparent that we're not right. We're doing our best at this moment to make, essentially, we're making educated, calculated guesses. But
yeah, you're right. I think our job is to give you the most informed and hopefully entertaining, way of doing it, and informing you to a point where you can go make good decisions. And no, not everything's going to be right, but I'll be damned if we're not right more than we're wrong in the black book. We certainly,
absolutely, I think
and we have to be. Otherwise, you have to put that pressure on ourselves to perform like a player does. Right. And I think that's what lacks sometimes. Sometimes, people don't hold themselves accountable enough. But some people do. There are a lot of people that do, and the better ones do. And that's why you should, follow those people and listen to them, because they really care and they take it to heart if something doesn't go right. And it's part of the, it's football. If we all had a magic crystal ball, then, we'd all be making thousands of dollars every day and no one would ever lose a game. And, that doesn't happen. That's, injuries happen, things happen, stuff, changes. So I think the best thing we can do always is give everyone the best information we can and arm them with the best tools we can, but also, the best concepts we can. Like, there's just too much vanilla out there. It's just too generic and it's not helping people.
Right. Well, I know when we spoke with Edwin Porras, we had a really good talk about the injury perspective of what's going on. And we kind of talked about, we got HIPAA. We're literally not allowed to talk about these guys' injuries beyond he hurt his lower body. Like, we don't know what's going on with some of these guys. And we look at him and we say, man, that guy's getting slow. That guy's not very good. And then 2 years later, it comes out, oh, yeah, he had like a fracture on his hip and 3 shin bones were broken in the lower leg. And like, you find out that, I mean, these guys are gladiators and you have no idea what's really
crazy,
going on.
And look, this year is going to be
for that third shin bone being
well, this year's going to be super sensitive to all of it too because of the COVID. So what's going to happen is, I think this year in particular, if you want to talk about deep strategy theory stuff here, this goes for every league, not just Dynasty, but I think understanding not just necessarily handcuffing a running back you have, but looking for those secondary running backs on teams, that if a guy does test positive, that backfield could be theirs for 2 weeks. So you want to look at the Benny Snells, or you want to look at the Madisons or guys like that are capable, not just whoever the backup is for your guy, but really be more aggressive on them. And I would also pay close attention to who the backup quarterbacks are, because I think that, it's just inevitable to think that we're going to go a whole season like a quarterback isn't going to, what's that going to have a ripple effect to the wide receivers? And, do we want to invest in, Michael Thomas is still a good investment because Winston's there. I'm not really worried if Winston comes and plays quarterback for Drew Brees because I know James Winston's going to throw the football, right? But, when you go down from quarterback 1 to quarterback 2 in some other situations, it gets a little dicey. So I think you have to kind of make the tiebreaker decisions that way. You have to think a little bit more clearly. And I also think it would be smart for leagues to add at least 1 or 2 more bench spots this year for that depth, because I think it's important. You might want to expand your draft by a round or 2, let people get a little deeper into some rosters and have some insurance policies. Otherwise, Fab is going to get real crazy real fast.
I was talking about that with some people here the other day. Why go crazy with it? Why make it really so incredibly intense when you could just go, okay, most leagues can get rid of a taxi squad. Let's just move all your players to an active. And then let's make the taxi squad have like 5 or 10 players, and you can just pick up players for your team and your guy if he goes out. Make a rule where somebody can't, if they're the first one on the trigger with first come, first serve, they can't just steal your guy. Right. Make it where like you got to give people a break, because otherwise we're all going to be scouring Twitter.
Yeah, it's gonna ruin the integrity of leagues.
It is. Yeah.
Because somebody's gonna say their fab the right way in that 1 week, and it's gonna get wacky. I think it's gonna ruin the integrity of the league. So be ahead of it, expand the rosters, make some smart decisions, and move along with it. And I just think the players need to be aware of it too. You need to have a deeper knowledge of the player pool this year than ever before. Like, you're just going to have to. So, and you have to take some shots there too. And instead of taking a shot maybe on, some guy you're going to cut right away, maybe take the less sexy pick of the guy that, well, that guy's pretty good if he ends up playing because this guy's out. And at least let's get through the first month of the season and see where we're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that those kind of, coin toss or tiebreaker situations are something I want to hone in on a little bit. So you may have your kind of overall process and run your numbers. And are there ever times that you go against those numbers or go against your process when you're selecting someone, or you're trading, or you're constructing your roster?
Well, RPV is always my guideline because, again, it's the understanding of where people get things wrong when they go about value systems is they look at the position as a whole, but they shouldn't. RB1 is a position. RB isn't. RB2 is a position. Why? Because most people in your league are going to have an RB1, all right? So if that's the case, you can't compare the whole group to each other. You have to compare just the RB1s to each other in those group of 12, let's say if there's 12 teams or 10 or what have you, or 14. And I think that's the thing you have to do. And then when you take that, then you use your instincts, like I was talking about before, like instincts on certain guys like Kenyon Drake, like Kareem Hunt. There's certain guys that you like the situation, you like things are stacking up, and even though there might be a less track record in certain scenarios, you have to not draft a team for last year. You have to draft a team for this year. So you have to wager that a little bit in there. But it all comes together, and if it all comes together properly, all the research and a little bit of the conjecture it goes a long way. Where people go wrong too is they take too much conjecture, too much about projections, and projections are like the fruits of the devil, man, because they always paint the picture of what you want to happen. No one paints a picture like James Conner's going to miss 8 games and suck next year. Like, nobody freaking says that in a projection because nobody wants to read that. Nobody wants to think that's a reality, but it is. And that is to their detriment, which is why I am much more about taking projections, with the averages of the previous season, with, a greater track record of a player when you have it. And then you understand the greater picture of a player, and then you can make a better judgment on who that player is, but more importantly, how much better he is or worse than the fantasy league average at that same position. And then you build your roster strength off that, and then you continue to build from there.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's taking one piece and overusing it. That is the big thing throughout all of Dynasty for me that I just hate. It's people do that with value, people do it with ADP. Like, these are useful pieces of information as a single data point, but don't then say like, oh, here's a screenshotted trade calculator showing that this guy is more valuable, or like, why would you take that guy when his ADP is 5 slots higher or 5 slots lower? It's just like, use it in context.
Context is great. I love context. A big fan of context.
You talk about ADP, but then you get something like I drafted at the turn, right? And so did Jeremy and Scott Fishbowl. So we both drafted at the 12 spot. And if you want that guy whose ADP is somewhere around 12 spots from where you're at, you got to take him now.
Yeah.
Because the chances that he's going to drop to the next pick is slim to none, right? I mean, people are monitoring that ADP. So yeah, you might get lucky every now and again, but if you got a guy and it fits your process and it fits your system, RPV is good, you got what you want there, you got to make that choice. Whether you're in slot 6 or slot 12, you got to think about, will he last? Or I like what your book said about how you've got the positional analysis and you're like, okay, yeah, for sure, this wide receiver is the best piece that we have here. But this tight end here is so much better than the tight end that will be left by the time I come back around that this second or third or fourth wide receiver on this list,
right,
the difference between those two is really what we're looking at. We're not looking at the difference between that top wide receiver. You got to combine them both, and then your potential points for both of those two players is higher.
Right, and that's the context.
And the crazy part about that is, too, the good news is when you take Kelsey out of that pool, tight end all of a sudden goes like this, squishes, right? so there's only, just like Gronk back in the day or Jimmy Graham back in the day, there's only that one team that's going to have that advantage. So you only have to worry really about that one time you're playing that team. And who knows, maybe you catch them on the bye week. You never know. Like, crazy things happen, right? So here's the thing. If you don't get that, that's okay. But what you can't afford to do is fall behind drastically other places just to get that too. It's always a constant managing of staying above that fantasy league average as much as you can. And that to me is always like the most important thing, is like, just keep looking and seeing the board in a different way and understanding the player value in a different way. And it's almost like comforting. I mean, Kyle, maybe you could speak to it too, because you read the book, but don't you find like once you kind of like let the percentages seep into your brain a little bit, you find the board very comforting when you see certain players going off. You're like, oh yeah, that guy doesn't move the needle, but this guy does. Like, you know exactly where to look for it. And all of a sudden, like, you're much calmer because you feel like you're more in control of what's happening.
Except in our G.I. Joe
well, I can't.
It was just like, okay, well, there's 24 picks before I pick again, and like 22 guys on my board are gone. Like,
maybe I don't even. You know what I do? I learned not to do that. Like, I don't fill my board until like 3 picks before. Like, I was like, I can't, because I'm just gonna get mad. So I'm just like, okay, when you're in a good draft with good people, you just go, okay, and I'm pretty much, that's all I'm in nowadays. But like, you try to just have, okay, it's 3 picks to me. These are the 3 guys I want. This is who's after me, what they've got. Let me just see which guy I want to take in which order and try to figure it out that way.
I remember one round in particular. I had a lot of rounds go the way I wanted. I do remember one round going, okay, there's going to be 9 wide receivers I like right in this tier. I think I should be good. I think I took at the turn there 2 running backs, and I said, okay, cool. By the time it comes back to me, those wide receivers should be there. And I saw about 6 or 7 running backs go. I'm feeling good. Probably a stretch of 7 wide receivers in a row go. All that. You
probably blame me because all the wide receivers in that league are on my team. I think. Like, I went like a fat kid in a candy store. I just went crazy with wide receivers in that league. Because again, that's where the board was. So like, I'm not gonna take players that don't move the needle just because they play this position or that position. I will figure it out. And eventually, like in most people's leagues where you're trading and stuff like that, you're going to have a surplus, which gives you leverage in a deal, which means you can trade somebody else if somebody's performing really well. And you can, like, I'll give you a for instance, like last year, to me, the board was very simple. Like, I saw a lot of value in the running backs in the beginning, And then I had wide receiving cores, and this is pretty much across the board. Like, I don't know, it may be like 60-70% of my leagues, the wide receiving core was Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, and probably Cortland Sutton or one other guy in that mix, right? Or Allen Robinson, because those were the guys that I felt like this is the perfect combination of situation, talent, ADP, all these things, and this is the sweet spot, right? So I'm gonna hit this grouping really hard, and I'm gonna plant my flag with these guys because I think Cooper Kupp can have a wide receiver one workload a lot of weeks. Chris Godwin can have upside of wide receiver one, performances. And that's what you're looking for. Like you have to pick those things out. Like this year, it's Calvin Ridley for me. Like Calvin Ridley's going to be on all my teams. You saw me take him in Fishbowl. He's going to be on every single one of my teams. Sanu gone, Hooper gone. You saw at the end of the year the targets going his way. Nobody throws more than the Falcons. I own all the Falcons in Scott Fishbowl this year. It's hilarious. But whatever.
You do have the entire stack.
I do. I didn't get Hurst, but I'll find a way somehow. I will. That's the only guy I did not get in Gurley. But that's the whole point. The point is you have to identify these players that are ready also to make the jump. Like last year it was Godwin. Even in August when the ADP went up a whole round, I was still ready. Like, take him in the third round. Okay, fine. I'll still take him in the third round instead of fourth or fifth, where he was going in like July. By the time he turned the page end of August, he was like almost end of the second round in some drafts. It was crazy. But I was still ready to do that. Same thing with Ridley this year. I think he's ready to make that jump into that next grouping.
Could be Allen Robinson this year too. He's getting hype over the summer.
I mean, look how good he was with nobody playing quarterback. I mean, problem is nobody's still playing quarterback. Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right?
It's sad when we're so excited for Foles.
And you shouldn't be, because he is no good either.
He is good for like 2 games in a row. And then you just better not start him for 16 because those other 14 are terrible.
Trubisky better figure it out, let me tell you.
At least Trubisky can run.
After that Mahomes contract, the Bears management is all going to get fired. Everyone's getting fired.
Saw somebody saying that they liked the Chicago strategy of saving $400 million by
sucking for a decade. Yeah.
Well, do you want to roll into your game or you want to take this thing to the hot cushion?
Let's hop over to the hot cushion.
All right. Well, Joe, I think it's time for me to scoot on down to the other end of the couch, and I can let you take my place on the hot cushion. Today, I'm going to discuss your fantasy football footprint and follow that up with some questions. Now, please keep in mind, I'm going to be very direct, to the point, and brutally honest, and these questions are not necessarily going to be easy. Is that okay?
Sure, why not?
All right. Well, before we get into the meat of this potato, I'd like to ask just a few things about you. So, what location do you find is the best place for you to do your writing?
That's a great. My first books were actually written while my oldest daughter, who's now 10, while she napped, and when I was on the subway train, the train from New Jersey into New York. So that's when my first couple books were written. So wherever I could get a free minute, but now I have a nice office where I write. So I write at my desk, and that's where I write. Period. That's it. It's the only place, and I leave my work there now.
That's actually a really good way to do it. That's one of the things that's tough about COVID and people working from home. It's really hard to shut it off, right? I mean, it's hard.
Yeah, I always worked from home, so for me, this was just like normal. Right? Like, I barely go out anyway. Unfortunately, I had no time. So it's like, like the only difference, I can't go to the movies or a restaurant. That's about it. So, but getting better finally.
Well, I just heard some New Jersey and New York. Whereabouts do you live in this world?
Well, I'm from Brooklyn, but I live in New Jersey, and I lived in Philly for a while, and lived in England for a short period of time too for school. So I've been around. I've been around the block or two, but in New Jersey right now, and it's nice here. This is this is as nice as it gets in New Jersey here. You get a couple nice months of summer, you got some cool weather, and then it goes back to being miserable and cold by the time we get to like October.
Tropical storm here and there.
Oh, it's brutal today. Brutal. It rained all day. It was crazy.
Yeah, Richard's up in your neck of the woods as well.
Yeah. 3 inches of rain today. Forget it. It's crazy.
Well, that's fantastic. So obviously you've been playing fantasy football a long time. Have you ever co-owned a team and had a negative experience with that co-owner?
Ooh, that's a great question. I like that question. I have. I've never had a negative experience because I'm very careful who the people are that I would team up with. And the only person that I'm co-owning a team with right now is Scott Bogman, who's I think a football genius. He's a great college guy too, and we're doing a Dynasty, that 32-team league I was telling you about from the football diehards. So we're doing that league together because he's the IDP wizard. I like IDP. He writes IDP for me, so I'd rather do that league with him. So and we see things the same way too. We're very like simpatico. He's my Black Book podcast co-host, one of them. So so I'm real picky. I tend to do them on my own, and I tend to be a big whore for Superflex leagues. I am the Superflex guy. Also, the reigning, defending, undisputed Superflex Flex League champion, I might add. Just, I don't have the belt yet because we're supposed to get the belt at the draft this year. And I told Sealy, you better mail me that damn belt. And it's like 3 weeks now. I'm still waiting for it. I'm going to have to call him and yell at him.
Those belts are the best, by the way.
I just want the belt. That's it. I wanted so much. I told Jake, I was like, I'm going to make you raise my hand at the draft this year too. I'm going to point to my wrist and make him raise my hand. He was like, no, I'm not doing it. I said, yeah, you are.
Oh, yeah.
Make you do it. And then look, he released this whole pandemic just to avoid it, jerk.
Well, Jared and I have co-owned a team. Right now we don't have any problems, but it's nice because he still brings me flowers and candy and tells me I'm pretty.
Oh, look at that. And you are, so.
All right, so I'm a beer guy and it's summer. So what is your favorite beer to drink in these muggy months?
It's funny. I'm fine with the beer. I'll drink anything. I'm more of a whiskey guy than a beer guy, and I'm not like an IPA guy. Like, every fantasy guy's an IPA guy except me. Like, I don't like it. I don't want it.
We're drinking IPAs.
You're drinking IPA right now, aren't you?
Right.
You got your big beard, and you're drinking an IPA. And you got your nice coiffed beard there, and that's fine. You represent most of the group that likes our things.
They just caught up with me. It's okay.
But I don't, beer wise in the summertime, man, I actually don't mind. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't need like expensive beers. I'll drink the stupid Leinkugel's summer shandies.
Heck yeah.
I'll pound a couple of those. I'll pound the Bud Light limes. I like those. I don't care if it makes me, dainty or fancy, fine, whatever. Like, I don't care. I don't have to prove my manhood to anybody. I'll drink a Bud Light lime on a hot summer day. So there you go.
So I have
whiskey at night. That's when I'll spend more money on the whiskey.
Oh, the whiskey's great. So
whiskey and cigars, yeah.
So you a particular type of bourbon, a Scotch, Canadian?
I'm good with any of it. No, I any of it. Actually, I had this thing, 1792 it was, that the Welsh turned me onto. It was spectacular. That was really good. That's what we drank last summer. So I haven't. With COVID, we have had less parties. So now there's less, now it's like you're just kind of drinking alone. It's kind of sad.
Right. My buddy on my hockey team decided he was going to get his wife pregnant a second time. So he said, we got frisky, so come drink whiskey. And he threw a baby shower for the second baby where they were supposed to bring toilet paper. But I did. I brought my version of toilet paper because we did natural diapers, the cloth diapers. And so I told my wife, the only way I'm changing one of those is if I have a garden hose, and I'm going to take that kid, I'm going to hang her up by her foot, and I'm going to spray that. And so I brought him a garden hose and a sprayer, and that was.
Dude, I don't know how people do that. I sorry, like, that's got to be disposed of. I did it for years, man. 10 years, 2 kids, 2 daughters, and I was the stay-at-home dad while doing all this stuff. So I was taking care of the kids and writing and teaching in New York on the side until like I could eventually just do fantasy stuff and No, cloth. How do people do this to themselves? I don't know how people had kids in like the 1800s and things like what the hell? Like, how do people live this way? Like,
just go out in the woods. Tell me when you're clean.
It's terrible. The whole house must just constantly just smell just awful. Like, I can't even fathom what that's like. Jeremy's got no idea what we're talking about. I can tell from the look at his face.
I was going to say, you should have seen the way they built Dynasty rosters back then, too. I have no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, I want to do psychology stuff on Jeremy. Jeremy, what was your mother like?
Loving, supportive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right. My final introduction question. What is your favorite thing about fantasy baseball?
About fantasy baseball? It's funny. Fantasy baseball is my first love, and baseball, I was a baseball player for many years. But as I've gotten older, the grind has really, really killed it for me. Like, the 162 game grind has been tough, and I don't have the same joy. I'm actually looking forward to the 68 season.
The COVID season was perfect for you.
Dude, I've been saying, I went on Sleeper in the Bus, my buddy Spore, and I was like, here's how you fix baseball. Ready? You 100 game regular season, All-Star break, 60 game tournament in August, in September to get to the World Series, play the World Series first week of October, boom, done. And then we're on to football. And it would be great because you have that point in the season of baseball where it's August, there's no sports, kids are home from school, they're up late, they can do whatever they want, they can stay up and watch all these games, And every August, what does everybody watch? The Little League World Series. Why? Because it's a baseball tournament. It's fun and it's exciting, and now the games matter. And that's like baseball will be great that way. But what the hell is the question about fantasy baseball? My favorite thing about fantasy baseball is there is a certain beauty in the stat lines, especially players who play to their mean so often. I love when you get a guy like a Jose Abreu, who you look at all of his split stats and everything, and he's just a great hitter across the board. Lefties, righties, home, road. I love split stats. In the baseball black book, to me, split stats tell the tale of what a player really is. Is he consistent? Does he hit lefties and righties? Does he hit home and road? Does he not? Is he tend to be streaky certain months? All that stuff. That's what's fascinating. But it's a grind, man. And when you're doing multiple sports, man, after a while, it does kind of, after a decade, it grates on you a little, actually. But football's like joy. Football's like, great, let's go. It's there. It's like a couple months, boom, it's over. And then you're like, oh, I miss it already. That's how I feel right now.
So much import over, do I put this guy in at my flex or not? That one decision once a week is so huge.
Yeah, and I do a lot of DFS shows and I do a lot of DFS coverage and I like to play too. And that's always the worst is like the smart mind, like all of us here, we're pretty smart. We pay attention to what's going on. Sometimes you sit there and the idle hands, like you end up in the last minute making changes to things you shouldn't make changes to, that your instincts are right in the first place. You should just leave things alone. That's the worst. So, and I'm definitely the king of doing that, and I'm so annoyed when I do. I actually wrote myself a Post-it note last year. I would get back from doing the show at the Meadowlands, and I'd come back right after the pregame, and it was like a note on my desk that "Don't touch your lineups." You idiot. Well, we all need to get reminded sometimes,
That's why we get married usually.
I'm divorced now, so I got to remind myself.
Well, you still got that reminder, whether it goes away or not, whether it's further away or not, that reminder is always there.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Now it's time for my truly hard-hitting analysis and drama-laden questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Question number 1. Albert Einstein created the theory of relativity during the early 1900s. This was actually a combination of two theories known as special relativity and general relativity. During the same time period, the Model T Ford was released for sale to the general public. I believe it is special to own one of these, although I do not, so that is just a theory. What is the relative position value of Jared Cook in standard scoring formats?
Oh, man, just Jared Cook off the top of my head. In standard scoring, and you can see I'm not looking at anything. I'm actually looking up because I don't even want to reference it. Standard scoring Jared Cook. I want to say, is he a -4?
-11.
-11. Okay, he's a little bit lower down than standard. Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, he's -8, I believe, in
half
point and regular PPR.
I like Cook, so I never want to hit him as hard as RPV does.
Right, Jeremy loves him too.
Well, you know what? There was a perfect example last year. Nobody liked the board of tight ends if you didn't want to pay. I had Jared Cook was my guy because I was like, he's going to score touchdowns because that offense scores touchdowns, right? So screw it. I'll just take Jared Cook, and it worked. It was fine.
It was a good one last year. But it took a little bit to get started, though. He was kind of had to get cranked up for the beginning of the season, and then, man, by the end of it, he was
rocking and rolling. So if you held in there and you held true, you did all right.
I'd like to edit. I'd like to edit my two kinds of people in the world. There are now only two kinds of people in the world. There are people that hate Jared Cook, and people that are wrong.
There you go. Wow, I'm glad that I made the club. I'm very happy that I somehow sneaked in there.
You had a 50-50 shot.
Thanks, dude.
All right, question number 2.
Okay.
You are the creator of the Fantasy Football Black Book.
Yes.
The option to call this the Fantasy Football Yellow Book, which could have been a bright idea. Also, an option would have been the Fantasy Football Green Book, which is money. I am happy you did not choose to make this the Fantasy Football Orange Book, because as an Oklahoma Sooner graduate, I am allergic to the color orange. In the end, I am happy that you chose black, because us colorblind people know that color is real, unlike the myriad of other colors people try to convince me exist. What is the term for an exploding star?
Exploding star, like the remnants is a red dwarf, isn't it?
It was a supernova.
A supernova is exploding star, and then what's left is a red dwarf? No, that's a
diminishing star.
That's a diminishing star.
Yes, a diminishing old star.
I should have known that.
was trying to get you with the colors and make you think black hole because the supernova does eventually become a black hole.
The supernova is actually exploding. I'm a big nerd for like, I'll watch all those how the universe works shows late at night. That's like how I fall asleep. I'll be watching that stuff. Like, I like perspective. I like, the universe being much bigger than me. But I also like the Rick and Morty line of nobody exists on purpose and nobody belongs anywhere. So.
All right, Rich, I'm going to give him a half a point because he didn't fall for my black hole comment.
Yeah, I think a red dwarf is when you're watching Snow White and you're wearing like rose-tinted glasses.
How does the universe work anyway? Sidebar. Not that serious yet.
All right, question number 3.
All right, here we go.
You recently drafted a team in the same division as me during the Scott Fish Bowl 10. Yeah. This division is G.I. Joe, and it was obvious that we have one of the toughest and most competent group of drafters out of the entire 120 divisions.
Agreed.
We drafted in the Pogs division, which is noted for being one of the softest divisions in all of SFBX. If you were to attend a super soft birthday party in a small town in Ontario, Canada, who would the party be for?
A super soft birthday? Is that what you said?
Yes, a super soft birthday party.
A super soft birthday in Ontario, Canada.
The town might help you if you knew it was the town of Letterkenny.
Oh, you see, I've never seen Letterkenny. Everybody tells me I got to see that, and I don't have Hulu. So I'm out on this one. But I'll make a funny answer anyway. It's for men with who have erectile dysfunction. They have
that might be the case because dairy is the answer. They threw this super soft birthday party for their friend, and they make him have pony rides and different deals, right? Decorate cupcakes.
I got to see that show, man. But I finally did catch up on Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I had been lagging behind the last few years, so I finally watched all of those, which is excellent. But I got to get on the Letterkenny, man.
I actually just started Curb Your Enthusiasm. So I'm on season 1 still.
Oh, how funny. Did you get to the doll head yet?
I don't think so, man. It's excruciating. I can only watch that show.
You would know if you've gotten there.
Wait till you get to the doll episode.
Right now he's just offending black people. Like just making terrible jokes and being a terrible person.
Well,
just
eventually
like
he has a family move in with him called the Black family. That's their last name. So he has to go around saying, well, the blacks are living with me all the time. And everyone looks at him like he's crazy, like he's a racist. He's like, no, it's just their name. It's very funny. He says everything that we're thinking, but he says it out loud.
Yes.
You just can't believe he's saying it.
Oh, all right. Well, our fourth and final question.
All right, I'm over here. I gotta redeem myself. Okay.
We know you are a fan of sports. You have a wonderful football product titled the Fantasy Football Black Book, aimed to help fantasy football players. You podcast and prepare content for baseball as well. Here in Arlington, Texas, we love our sports and being sporting in general. That is why we don't shoot living things unless we are going to eat them. There are, of course, 3 exceptions. We shoot squirrels because they are just furry rats. We kill armadillos because they destroy our land. What is the other living thing that we shoot on site?
Groundhogs, I hope, because they're annoying and I've got 2 of them. So I just want it to be groundhogs.
The answer is cardinals.
Really?
Since 2011.
Why?
Yes, everybody in Arlington, Texas, home of the Texas Rangers, shoots cardinals on site.
Why is this?
This is a joke referring to when the Cardinals snatched the World Series away from the Texas
years
Rangers.
Ago. You're living in the past, man. That's a long time ago now. I know the Rangers don't get in there very often, but still, bro.
Yeah, we get in there once every 40 years.
I thought you had like some weird cardinal infestation or something like that. Just shoot groundhog. Those sons of bitches, let me tell you, they're tunneling everywhere. I can sense it.
It's a total lie. We shoot way more than that.
The legislature. Yeah,
I was gonna say you guys shoot. It's a Texas. Like I expect you guys to shoot stuff. So
thank you, Nelson Cruz. You are my hero. For
Nelson, I hate
forgetting how to jump.
Well, he didn't ever learn how to jump. He just forgot how to walk back 2 more steps.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time on the hot cushion. I appreciate your candid and truthful answers and my insightful and hard-hitting analysis.
Well, I appreciate both of those things as well.
And we did tab a half point on that one.
Yeah, you are.
We gave you a half a point. I think I was pretty close. You didn't fall for the trick on the black hole, so you were.
I'm mad that I didn't say supernova. My brain is just mush. This is hour 7 for me of broadcasting stuff today, so I should have gotten supernova. So that's my bad.
I knew you knew.
I did. That's why I was like, wait, red dwarf? Like, no, it's like the remnants of the other. Like, it's and then I told you, I'm a giant dork. I watch all those things, so I like to know these things. But now I won't forget it. So thank you for reminding me. So there you go. That was fun. I like the amount of thought you put into this. It's very fun. It's a good time. This is not every podcast. I like this. This is why I always say yes, because I know I was always excited when anyone would talk to me when I started podcast stuff, and the only thing, and then like you never know, like you go on and you get like this is hilarious. I love this. I'll come on anytime you want me to do just this.
Fantastic, Joe.
The hot cushion is one of our guest favorites for sure. It's a brain test, but also just like you're better if you just turn your brain off.
Yeah.
Well, I knew he was always leading me somewhere where it was never going to, It's like, I like to drink beer. Beer is made from hops. What do you think about rabbits when they jump? Like, he was just kind of like, oh, It's like...
Yeah, write that one down. That was like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, I can see
Hopefully
Kyle
we're
right
recording.
now. Oh, wait a minute. It's a good thing we're going to keep that one. Yeah.
Totally going to be a rabbit question next year when you come back on. All right. Why don't I take the reins back over here? And since everyone, as we were saying at the beginning of the show and have been promoting throughout, should go buy the Fantasy Football Black Book, where there's comprehensive rookie coverage, we're going to do a little exercise or game that I call Buy the Running Back Rook. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read you a list of 10 rookie running backs. So this is actually for both you and Kyle here.
I don't know this game, so he's throwing this one on me too. So
correct, yeah. And I have not read these instructions to him either, so he has no idea. So I'm going to read you a list of 10 rookie running backs.
Okay.
And that's kind of the player pool that you're going to be working with. And since you love auction, as you said earlier, we're going to do an auction format, and I'm going to present each player one at a time, and you guys will bid.
And this is in Dynasty bidding? Is that what we're doing, or redraft?
Dynasty.
Okay.
Yep. And so you're
PPR.
Yep. PPR. It's all running backs, so we don't
Points per first down.
No.
Okay.
12 teams.
Just clarifying.
You're regretting this game, aren't you, Jeremy?
I am.
All right.
And the game is over. All right. So there are 10 players in the pool, and I'm going to tell you those players. However, you're going to be bidding on them based solely on one real tweet that describes the player, with the player's name redacted. So,
all right.
Come through Twitter today to try and find some tweets.
What's our bankroll? 100?
No, only $20.
Oh.
Okay. Total to spend on anybody?
Total.
So $20 on 10 players.
Correct.
And you're going to give them one at a time. We have to decide how much we want to bid on them as we go.
Right.
And then you're going to keep
recalibrating
the money. Okay.
Correct. I'm counting.
Got it.
All right. Let's go. Let's play.
All right. And the kind of measurement system at the end is fairly arbitrary. It's kind of going to be a group consensus. And if you guys don't decide who has the better group of running backs, then I will bring it to you.
All right. Let's go.
Okay. Oh, one other note. There may or may not be a benefit to having some remaining dollars at the end of the auction.
Okay.
All right. So here are the running backs. CEH, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Keyshawn Vaughn, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Joshua Kelly, and Lynn Bowden. Need me to run back through those?
Nope.
Good.
Okay. All right. So are you ready for the first tweet?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is a tweet from PFF College. The longest in-air pass by a running back since 2014 was this player, and it was 42 yards.
I'm going to bid $2.
Okay.
I'll go 3.
All right. You got him.
Nice. 1.
All right.
Next.
Next is a tweet from Roto World Football. This player's OC, current OC, or I guess new OC, is, quote, not concerned with this player's blocking.
I'll pass.
All right. I'm going to bid $3 on this.
After he passed?
Yeah. I could get back in. I was going to just defer to him.
Fair.
He's
Pass the
deferring.
bidding. So he wants him. So he likes the flashy guy who can't block.
Right.
Well, I know I'm just gauging it on Jeremy trying to throw these curveballs at us, and I'm hoping that this
gauging
is
it
the
on
best guy in there.
I'm gauging on what's in between the lines there, which is that somebody doesn't think this kid can block, which means that your quarterback's going to get killed. So,
All right. So you both have a player, and you both have
have-
$17
right.
remaining.
That's right. Next.
All right. This tweet is from PFF Fantasy Football. This player's rushing since 2018. He had 1,283 yards after contact and 24 touchdowns.
1,200. Wait, read that one more time. The whole thing.
Yep. So this player's rushing since 2018.
So it's 2 seasons. Okay.
He had 1,283 yards after contact, 24 touchdowns.
I'll go 2 on this guy.
I'm going to take it to 3.
I'll take it to 5.
All right, you got him.
Boom.
AJ Dillon's pretty good.
Joe is down to $12
That's
and
fine.
has his second player. Kyle still at 17. Next, tweet from Josh Norris. Eyeball emoji. Getting rookie season David Johnson vibes. ... Late season surge with monster week potential.
I'll throw a buck.
I'm going to go 3.
Yeah, you can take him.
All right.
Sounds like somebody trying to make something happen.
14. All right. So
I'm
Kyle,
hoping that
you're
one's
14,
Dobbins.
Joe's at 12. You both have 2 players. Next, tweet from an upcoming guest of ours, John Bauer of the Dynasty Theory podcast. This player is my more expensive 2020 version of Devin Singletary. He's been a target of mine in every rookie draft.
I know
bid
who
a
that
buck.
is. I think I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna do.
I'm there.
How much money do I have left? And what player
You
are we
have
on?
$12.
And what player is this? 5?
This is player 5.
I'll go 2.
All right, you can have him.
Yeah.
Okay. Joe down to $10 and has his third player. Kyle, you have $14 and 2 players.
Okay.
Player number 6. Tweet from Shane Swagger from Superflex.
Ainzilla.
Yes, Swagzilla. Referencing his SFB selection, he said, "Very proud to say I took this player earlier than anyone else."
Buck.
That's
Nah.
scary.
That's why I said a buck, just in case. Just in case it's a good one.
Ah, man.
You're
Put-
2,
put
Kyle?
your money
I'm going to
there.
go $2.
Good.
That was a bait buck by Joe.
Auction is a game.
It is.
inside the game. That's why I like auction.
All right. Okay, so Kyle, you're down to, let's see here.
12.
You're down to 12, and you have 4 players.
3.
Joe is at 10 with 3. Player number 7. I don't actually remember who tweeted this, but
Doesn't
it's a
matter.
stat, so it doesn't matter. Insert player led the SEC in rushing in 2019.
I'll go $2 because I like this guy.
I will go 3.
Oof.
Do you really like him, Kyle?
4 is pretty expensive. I'm going to go ahead and let you take Lynn Bowden.
$7 for Joe. All right. Let's see here. So, Kyle, you have 3. I may have misspoken and said 4 before that.
You
have
did,
3,
but I corrected you.
and I did not listen to you, as usual. And Joe has 4, $7. Kyle, you have 3, and $12 remaining. 3 players left. Tweet from PFF. The most rushing attempts with 8+ defenders in the box last season. This player had 135.
Makes me wrong on one of my earlier thoughts. I'm going to go ahead and go $5.
I'll let him take it.
Okay, you're both down to 7. You both have 4.
My God.
We'll see who wants this next one the most, who gets to 7 the most.
7.
And remember, there may or may not be an advantage to having some money left over.
Because I just took A.J. Dillon, by the way.
All right. Also a tweet from PFF. Most rushing attempts with 8+ defenders in the box last season. This player, 240.
Or maybe I was wrong and that one is. He's
Now I'm
tricking me
gonna
with these tweets.
I'm good.
All right. Well, that one's, one is going to be Dillon and the other is going to be Akers. So I'm going to go ahead and go 5.
What'd you say, Kyle? 5?
He said 5, so he's got $2 left now,
Yeah.
and he's got 5 players.
Correct.
All right, so the next guy is basically mine. So
He
Got a
is.
bid on him, though.
You do
well,
have.
how much money do you have left?
Kyle has 2. Joe, you have 7.
Okay, I bid 3. Next.
Doesn't
And I have more money left over for the
even need the
possible
clue.
leftover
That is maybe strategic.
Yeah.
That was a good move. I got outsmarted.
You bid
Well,
3.
let's not say. Not yet.
4.
Let's see the names, my friend.
Okay, let's see here.
There's a couple that go one or two ways here.
So as I said, it may or may not be a benefit to have some remaining dollars at the end of the auction. Unfortunately, that's irrelevant. There is no advantage to leaving money on the table. So
Oh, that was a tease.
it was.
All right, so who do we get?
Okay, you want me to go down by clue and
No,
find out who's
just-
on your team, or you want me to read your roster?
Just read the rosters.
Yeah.
All right.
We're
Joe.
ready for the big reveal.
Sure. Joe, your first player you bought was Cam Akers.
Yep.
He had the longest pass thrown, former quarterback. Your second player is Joshua Kelly. A lot of yards after contact.
Yeah, that's a lot. I want that
Well,
player.
Your third player.
Nobody cared about that passing offense that year.
No.
Your third player is actually no. I'm going to give Kyle 2 players, and then
Okay.
Okay.
we'll jump back and forth. Kyle, the first player you bought, this was his OC is not concerned, is CEH.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy is not concerned.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty
Okay.
good.
He's blocking. Your second player
It should be. You just spent $400 billion on a quarterback. You better freaking be sure about the blocking. My God.
Hey, that's what the offensive line is for, not the running game.
In theory. All right.
The tweet was pre $450 million contract. Not that really changed anything, but
It does. Oh, it does.
so maybe
No, keep
we'll
going.
go back for a quote for him and say I'm
No, that's
now
good.
slightly concerned. All right, so the second player that Kyle bought was the Josh Norris eyeball emoji David Johnson vibes is Antonio Gibson. So you started Kyle with CEH and Gibson. Joe, you have Akers and Kelly. We'll go back to Joe for his third and fourth players. He received J.K. Dobbins, who is John Bauer's 2020 version of Devin Singletary.
I like
That would be
Devin
Keyshawn
Singletary.
Vaughn there.
I just-
He loved him some Keyshawn Vaughn.
I just wish
I
Devin
know, well,
Singletary
that's-
would score a touchdown. I love him, but it's just not a lot of touchdowns for me.
That's why I put that tweet in there, because everybody knows that everybody on that podcast likes Keyshawn Vaughn more than their wives. Okay, so the fourth player that Joe received was Lynn Bowden, as Kyle projected.
There you go. You got it.
And then Kyle's third and fourth players are DeAndre Swift,
Kyle's winning.
and his fourth player was Jonathan Taylor. who had the
Well,
second
Kyle, I
most.
enjoyed playing with you. Congratulations, you won. Because you got all the guys. You got the
I'm
three
not-
best guys there.
So I'm not sure that Keyshawn Vaughn can save you here, but he was your
Keyshawn Vaughn
fifth.
cannot save me, and nor can he save anyone. So it was a
And
fun
I-
game. I appreciate that. I enjoyed my time. Can you give me a parting gift at least, and send me on my way?
Well, if Kyle's team gets diminished at all with AJ Dillon, then that's your parting gift.
Still have
Well,
him as
one
my
injury,
number
all of a
6.
sudden, I'm right back in it.
I mean, that A.J. Dillon, that's just such an odd size and speed specimen playing in a system that just decided they didn't want to pass. I'd be anxious to see what he can do with a quarterback who actually can distribute the ball. And I mean, they've played with fat quarterbacks before, but they weren't supposed to be, or fat running backs before, but Lacey was not supposed to be the size of a lineman. He just ended up that way. So,
look, I think with all the rookie running backs this year, obviously it's just funny that every single one of them landed in a spot with somebody else ahead of them, which is, again, some of those guys I don't have much time for, they're ahead of them. Others where, unfortunately, it's like, I still think Marlon Mack's going to get playing time. I know, people don't think Jonathan Taylor. I'm like, yeah, well, Marlon Mack had 1,000 yards last year, and you got an old quarterback. So, you have to kind of, keep that in mind, I think, a little bit whenever you're looking at these things. And as exciting as it is to get these young guys, I couldn't have been more excited to have all the Dalvin Cook shares in his rookie season. It did not work out. Okay. Just you have to try to, understand and build that in a little bit when you're constructing rosters. And it's okay to be aggressive on them, but it's one thing to have to count on them. It's another thing when they're bonus guys in redraft leagues. Obviously different in Dynasty, completely different.
Sure.
Yeah. Because Dalvin Cook, he gave you 2 or 3, maybe 4 good weeks that first year.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody was like,
I was right. And then I was like, oh, damn it.
Not this year.
Everything's gone to crap. And this year, especially too, with less time for everybody and, less reps, it's going to be tricky. I'd say this, I'm taking the approach I took last year too, which is I'm letting other people, last year I didn't draft Miles Sanders anywhere, and I traded for him everywhere last year I could. And it was much better to trade for those players than it was to overdraft them. So, and I don't mean draft, just overdraft. And that's, again, redraft
1.02,
leagues.
that's all you're going to get him.
It might take these guys 4 or 6 weeks to get the feel for the offense, especially with what's going on and how it is. So, you just never can tell, how that's all going to go. But obviously in Dynasty leagues, there's every reason to think that, next year, these backfields are going to turn over considerably in favor of most of these guys.
Yeah. Oh, next year they're all going to be phenomenal. That top 5 especially, but there's some more in there too that are just going to be good. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on with us. Can you give us some information again? Where's your favorite place for us to buy the Fantasy Football Black Book?
Well, look, anywhere is fine. I'm just grateful anybody gets it. So you can go to Amazon where you get the paperback version, and you can also get the Kindle version there. You can go to iTunes as well. And that's where it is. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Pisa PS17, and all the podcast information's on there. And I'm on Sports Grid 7 days a week doing the TV on Fantasy Sports Today, hosting Diamond Bets, and then hopefully when NFL comes back around soon, we'll be back on the NFL pregame show there from the Meadowlands live from the FanDuel Sportsbook, which is a good time. So thanks for having me, guys. This was a hoot, man. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate all the effort that went into constructing these games and these intellectual gymnastics that you had me go through. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Absolutely. Now, hopefully your brain gets a little bit of a break, not only at the end of the day, but having made it through the gauntlet of our podcast. And while you may not be incredibly excited about your half point in the hot cushion, that's actually up on the leaderboard as many fail to acquire any sort of points.
I think the half point was more just you guys being nice, but I'll take it. So whatever.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks again. This was an absolute blast. Definitely go buy the Fantasy Football Black Book. Go follow Joe. If you don't, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but do it. Follow us on Twitter as well at Dynasty Self Help. Follow our producer Rich at Streaming Rich. Kyle at Dogleg Brewer, so you can tell him how bad his SFBX team is. I'm at Jared Schwob, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, folks. Man, Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me, man. Terrific, man. I hope you got what you need, man.
Oh, man, no, we did. And, I appreciate you drafting with me in the Scott Fish Bowl. That's been a riot.
I appreciate